Bleeding purple and gold. From the heart of Los Angeles, this is the LakersNation.com podcast with your host, Trevor Lane.
Welcome to the show. As always, we are brought to you by LakersNation.com and CLNS Media. Today's show is sponsored by DraftKings.com. Head over to DraftKings and use the promo code CLNS to play fantasy basketball for free and earn your shot at up to $10,000 in prizes. Well, the Los Angeles Lakers are on a bit of a losing streak here, and a lot has not gone right for them over the last week or so. So I figured now is a good time to start looking at trades and what the Lakers are going to be looking at doing as we're getting closer and closer to the trade deadline. And since I was dusting off the trade machine, I figured that there wouldn't be anybody better to bring on than Anthony Irwin of Locked On Lakers, who is a trade machine master. Anthony, thanks so much for joining the show.
Trade machine master. Like, if people who respond to my trades were to see that, they would just laugh obscenely because a lot of people tend to get really upset about the trades, which is kind of what I go for. Basically, like, if both sides of a trade dislike it, that tells me I'm on the right track.
Absolutely. that is the measure of a good trade. If you have both fan bases, or 3 or 4, however many teams you're including in the deal, just infuriated, then you've probably got a pretty fair deal. I mean, that's just kind of the way it works in this situation, right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty rare. I mean, sometimes you'll get both sides of the trade happy about it, which is obviously the best case scenario. But like, if the Lakers are saying, or if Laker fans are telling me we're giving up too much, and the other side is saying, wait, why would we do that? Then that tells me that, okay, this is plausible at this point. Probably none of these trades ever actually come to fruition, because if I'm thinking of a trade that could actually happen, that tells me that the millionaires who are actually in charge of these teams probably aren't thinking creatively enough, but it's a good place to start.
So this year, the Lakers are kind of in an interesting situation. I want to just kind of kick things off by, before we start just diving into trades, let's kind of set up the parameters of what the Lakers are going to be looking for in a trade this year. And I was playing around with the trade machine a bit, and here's the thing. It's really tricky to come up with Lakers trades right now. I do think they're going to be very, very active on the trade market this year, but it's really tricky because at this point, the Lakers, when I'm looking at these things, I'm thinking they are not going to take back any contracts that go longer than this year, which makes things extremely difficult. Have you been running into the same situation when you've been playing around?
Yeah, that's the toughest part of what we're trying to do here, is that if the Lakers want to improve their roster right now because they don't have their draft pick in the upcoming draft, but they want to do so and maintain cap flexibility this offseason when they think that they can go after LeBron, Paul George, Boogie, whoever may have you. And I mean, basically what you have to do, or where I always start, is, all right, type in 2018 NBA free agents, go through that list, find the team that player plays for, and then at that point, then you're looking to see, okay, which expiring contract could the Lakers target here so that they can free up money and maybe improve their team, but more than anything, free up as much money as they possibly can this summer.
Yeah, I was looking at this. I think that's got to be number one on the Lakers' goals here is to free up cap space for next summer, for when they've got all those big stars. Well, at least there's not all that many. I guess the 3 big guys that they're going to be chasing after with LeBron and Paul George and DeMarcus Cousins. But then it also got me thinking, are there any situations out there where maybe they could add a piece now that helps attract somebody later? So maybe if they have to burn a little bit of cap space, but they add a player that could then entice someone like a Paul George or a LeBron James to come and join them. I don't know that there's such a situation out there, but could you see them maybe swinging for the fences on something like that at the trade deadline rather than trying to get 2 of those 3 guys next summer?
Well, it's kind of funny that you mentioned Paul George. Right? Like the guy is not being utilized consistently the way he should be in Oklahoma City. And there was a report when they lost to Orlando that during the game, Russell Westbrook fired a look in Paul George's direction, and then Paul George kind of fired one right back at him. They wound up losing. They lost by double digits to an Orlando Magic team that had lost 9 straight games heading into that one. And Oklahoma City, like, it just reminds me a lot of that 2012, 2013 Lakers team with Steve Nash and Dwight Howard. And
oh gosh, the now this is going to be fun crew.
Exactly. Even if I don't have those years quite right, everybody listening to this knows exactly which season I'm talking about. But that's kind of what's going on out there in Oklahoma City. And if you're the Thunder, you kind of have to start asking yourself, look, when we acquired Paul George, it was with the premise of we have to convince him to stick around long term. And have they done enough to do so far this season? I would argue no. And do they think they can do enough moving forward to do so? I would again argue that they cannot. So do they maybe think about trading him and getting what they possibly can get back for him before he leaves for nothing in the offseason? In which case, where's he going to leave for in the offseason? It's probably going to be the Lakers by all accounts. So the Lakers could maybe get involved in this and maybe convince him to accept his player option to free up a little bit more money so that they can acquire LeBron in free agency or Boogie in free agency and kind of go from there. And the trade that I came down to, or the trade that to me made the most sense for the Lakers and for the Thunder, was if the Lakers were to send Clarkson, KCP, and Nance to Oklahoma City for Paul George, and they have Alex Abrinas on there for $5 million to make the salaries work for both sides. And that to me makes the most sense for Oklahoma City, because now you have a few young pieces and a shooting guard who you can slide in right now and fit alongside Russell Westbrook. And for the Lakers, they have a few extra months to convince Paul George to stick around and to convince LeBron, like, hey, we're for real now. We are looking to build whatever we possibly can moving forward.
Well, now in theory, that's an interesting idea, especially like the idea of putting KCP next to Westbrook, because then KCP checks whoever the opposing team's best guard is, and KCP doesn't need the ball, and Russell Westbrook does. I mean, he loves having the ball in his hands, so that seems like a good situation for them. But at the same time, I mean, OKC just beat the Minnesota Timberwolves and the San Antonio Spurs back-to-back, so they picked up a couple of big wins there. Would that be kind of, I don't know, waving the white flag on the season for them, or do you think that leaves them enough firepower to still sell their fan base on them really contending this year?
Well, it's a little bit of both. I think it's waving the white flag on this experiment, and it was always going to be a gamble. Like, very few super teams actually gel the way people expect them to in that first season. Even look back at the original kind of big three, right, where it was LeBron and Wade and Chris Bosh. And that first season started out in a way that many people didn't necessarily envision, and they didn't win a title in their first year. And a lot of people were questioning, okay, is this actually going to work out? Are they actually going to figure these things out? And what it really comes down to is it's hard to get 3 guys who are used to having usage rates upwards of 25 to 30 and up rates or percentage. And that's kind of what you're looking at here with OKC. And they're working on this with lesser players like Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, and LeBron were all arguably top 10 NBA players. Carmelo Anthony's not a top 10 NBA player. I would argue he's probably not even the top 20. And Paul George is in the discussion of top 10, but there are arguments to make either way. And then Russell Westbrook is Russell Westbrook. So, but what it comes down to, if you're OKC, is look, we aren't a market that's going to convince free agents to come here. We aren't a market. It's going to be tough after watching the way this goes to convince free agents, hey, come play with Russell Westbrook. It's great, you know. So
he'll stare at you.
Yeah, right. He'll stare at you, or he'll yell at you when you don't let like his 10th rebound come to him. Did you see the clip the other day where he passed the ball to Steven Adams and Adams didn't shoot it right away, and he actually threw like a fit on the court
because he wanted the assist?
Yeah, that was going to be his 10th assist for a triple-double. I love Russell.
Oh, it's almost like, wasn't it Ricky Davis back in the day who shot at the wrong basket?
Yeah, to get the extra rebound?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ricky Davis was the only person watching that who had like firsthand experience of that exact situation.
He's thinking, I would have done the same thing, man.
It'd have been great if he tweeted at Russell Westbrook like respect at Russ West, whatever. But yeah, I mean, like yes, technically it is waving the white flag because the season hasn't gone how they expected. But on the other hand, it's just smart asset management, right? Where they're saying this hasn't worked out necessarily, and we can't let a player of Paul George's ilk just walk out for nothing. The Lakers made that mistake a few times over as they declined from title contention. They let Powell leave for nothing. They let Dwight leave for nothing. Kobe was never going to be traded, obviously, but they just Ed Davis comes to mind, and these guys who hit the market and had a market out there for them, they just let those guys walk out the door without getting anything in return. And it's okay if you're the Lakers and you can sign free agents because you're the Lakers. You cannot do that if you're the Oklahoma City Thunder, because it's really hard for them to replace that kind of talent.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, they are in an interesting situation with that because it's going to be hard for them to bring back all three of those guys, period. I mean, we assume that Westbrook is going to be there because he's kind of their guy that they're building around, but Carmelo Anthony has a big option, and he's probably going to take that. I think he'll make about $27 million or so next season, so I don't see him turning that down. And then you've got Paul George out there. I mean, that's going to be a big hit for the Thunder, so maybe there'll be a little bit of pressure on them to go ahead and make a move now. Now, from the Lakers side of things, I would think that would be just about a no-brainer because, I mean, you've got KCP who's on a one-year deal, and we've had the gut feeling that he's not in it for the long haul in LA. I mean, who knows? Maybe things change by the end of the season, but it doesn't seem like he's a guy that's going to stick around past the end of the year when his contract expires. Meanwhile, Jordan Clarkson is a guy you'd almost have to move. You're going to have to clear his salary in order to bring in the pieces that they want to bring in this summer anyway. So there's two guys right there in the deal that probably have to move. Hurts a little bit to lose Nance, but I mean, this is Paul George we're talking about. It seems like a move like that would be a no-brainer to me. You did mention, though, that you would ask Paul George to pick up his team option. What's the purpose of that? I mean, I know it saves the Lakers a little bit of money, but from his perspective, why would he do something like that?
Well, so if you're Paul George, the number one reason people have a problem with Paul George's interest in the Lakers is because he's going from a winning situation to a non-winning situation, right? Like that was when people kind of scratched their heads at his interest when he was with the Pacers. They said, well, that's a lateral movement in terms of ability to win basketball games. And then if he was to leave Russell Westbrook and leave Carmelo Anthony and leave the Thunder for the Lakers, people would again wonder, what's the reason behind this? Are you really trying to win basketball games with that move, right? And if you're Paul George, the best way for you to get what you want in playing back home and being a Laker and being the guy for the Lakers for at least a little bit, or being the impetus for the Lakers' eventual ascension back to where Laker fans want them to be. If you want that and also to win basketball games, then you're going to have to take less money, or you're going to have to hope that whoever comes to play with you will take less money. And yes, if you're Paul George and you had that insane leg injury that he had a few years back, and your next contract is going to take you to the other side of 30, then it obviously makes the most sense to cash in as soon as you possibly can. And that's where the Lakers would have to do some convincing with him, is to say, look, hold off on that. I promise we're going to take care of you. But if you take your player, if you just accept your player option, which I believe is I think it's like roughly $20 million next year. So if he was to accept that $20 million option next year, now the Lakers, who would have had to pay him upwards of 25, I believe, or 26 or even $27 million, that's $5 to $7 million extra dollars that they can use either on a max player of LeBron James's talent level, or on another player. If they were to sign a Boogie who is around the same, LeBron, I think, can sign for $30 million because
I think he may even be 35, and I think
he might be 35.
Might be 30. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how it is.
So if you're hoping to sign LeBron, then that's the kind of money that you can offer him, a full max that he is deserved via the new CBA. If you're signing a Boogie, you can offer him that full max and have money to sign a starting caliber player who is chasing titles, basically, right? And that's what you're saying to Paul George is, look, if you take less, it puts you in a situation where you can both play in Los Angeles the way you want to and win basketball games and shut everybody who is scratching their heads about your decision to come to Los Angeles. You can tell those guys, look, I'm doing both. I get to do both. And for somebody like Paul George, who seems to care a lot about his public image, I feel like he would at least listen. I don't know if I would bet on him actually taking his player option, but he would at least listen to the conversation, dependent on what guy they think they can get him or what guy they can promise him to play with.
For sure, yeah. I mean, it would almost certainly take saying, hey, look, if you give this up, then LeBron is in. He's signing with us, and then you're playing alongside him. So it maybe if something like that could happen, but otherwise it is a lot of money, but who knows? I mean, maybe it would work out, and if it does, that would be absolutely phenomenal for the Lakers. Now, we do need to get into exactly who the Lakers will put on the trading block and what we should be looking for as we get closer to the trade deadline, which is actually early this year. The trade deadline is on February 8th, so we don't end up with a DeMarcus Cousins situation like we saw in New Orleans, where he got traded like during the All-Star game, which was a disaster. So we'll get into that in just 1 second. First, though, we got to pause. I got to talk about DraftKings real quick. Awesome stuff. Basketball season is in full swing, and all of your favorite basketball players have returned to action. It's time for you to put your fantasy knowledge to the test, win huge cash prizes every night playing one-day fantasy basketball at DraftKings.com. There are just so many ways to play. Choose from public contests with huge cash prizes or private contests where you compete against your friends. There's beginner contests, casual contests. They've got all kinds of skill levels. And the best part is you get to draft a new team every day. And that is arguably the most fun part of fantasy basketball, is drafting your team. And the only thing that's better is you can actually win cash doing it. There's huge cash prizes and bragging rights awaiting you at DraftKings. So use the code CLNS at DraftKings.com. Play free with your first deposit for your share of $10,000 in total prizes. Don't wait. Use that code CLNS at DraftKings.com right now. Choose your lineup and you can cash in. Again, that's CLNS and DraftKings.com. There's a minimum $5 deposit required. Eligibility restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com for all the details. Go check it out. So, Anthony, as I mentioned, the deadline for trades is going to be a little bit early this year. It's going to be February 8th, the day after my birthday. I'm a little bit bummed about that because it means I'm going to be spending my birthday writing trade rumors for LakersNation.com. That's what I'm going to be doing all day. But
it's better than getting traded.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. It could be worse. I could be getting traded to Sacramento or something like that. That wouldn't be so great. But let's take a look at this Lakers roster. I mean, I have to assume at this point that Rob Pelinka, who has already mentioned that he expects trade discussions to pick up as of December 15th. There was a story about that on LakersNation.com today. Rob Pelinka says December 15th, trade discussions are going to pick up. I'm expecting the Lakers to be pretty active. I'm assuming they are not going to include, unless something crazy happens, they're not going to include Lonzo, Kuzma, or Brandon Ingram in those trade talks. But who do you think is they're going to be offering up more than anybody else? Like, who do you think is really going to be on the block for the Lakers?
Well, I mean, aside from Luol Deng, right? Luol Deng,
right? I mean, Luol Deng, they'll be offering to everybody. Hey, he's great. Really, he's well preserved. We've kept him fresh.
Yeah, like they're calling like the Shanghai Kings or whatever it is out there. Like please take this guy. But aside from that, like in terms of realistic people that they're putting on the blocks, I don't think it's a coincidence that he's talking about December 15th, because the Lakers have a guy in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope who is an expiring deal, which teams love to have, especially in a market with so few, that features so few teams with cap space coming into this next offseason. And also he happens to be the rare combination of an expiring deal who also helps teams win basketball games, right? Like the Lakers have two of those guys. They have Brook Lopez and they have Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. And both of those guys, especially the latter, if you were to just slide them in exchange for their current shooting guard for the vast majority of the league, that might be at least a lateral movement or an upgrade in some cases. And so I don't think it's any coincidence that Rob Pelinka is talking about December 15th. If you're KCP, you keep hearing Rob Pelinka bring up the December 15th date, and you're like, okay, fine. Like I guarantee you his lease runs through December 15th, wherever he's living. he just knows that something might go down on that day. So he's the first guy to me who you can attach along with a young asset and bring in somebody who the Lakers are hoping to maybe improve the team with. Other than that, Jordan Clarkson probably is not feeling too great about his future in Los Angeles. Julius Randle has played really, really well, so it would be extremely painful if they were to trade him. But the Lakers have some tough decisions to make considering what they're hoping to do this coming offseason. And if they want to sign 2 max guys, in some cases 3 max guys, if you hear either Magic or Pelinka talk about it, they have to move they have to move Clarkson. They cannot pay Randall. So those 3 guys especially come to mind in terms of guys that they're really hoping to trade away.
Well, three max guys is just about impossible. I mean, they'd have to have essentially no one on their roster in order to sign 3 max guys. And I don't care how much Magic winks, I don't think he can really make that one happen. But
that's not a clause in the CBA like that. If you wink enough, you don't get extra money.
For some reason, it just doesn't work that way. The KCP thing is interesting though. Now because he signed a 1-year deal, that means he has an inherent no trade clause, or at least he can veto any trade. Mm-hmm. So he would have to go somewhere that he was comfortable with. So you can't just exile him somewhere to some team that he doesn't want to go to. And on top of that, his agent is Rich Paul, is the same agent as LeBron James. So you would have to send him into a perfect situation because you don't want to piss off LeBron's agent when you are going to be trying to woo LeBron James next summer. So maybe he does get moved, but I think they'd have to be really, really careful with the way they went about it. Could you see a reason why KCP would accept a move to another team at this point? I mean, he's getting tons of minutes with the Lakers, getting all the opportunities he could ask for. What would be his motivation there?
Well, wins help give role players especially a little bump in their incoming salary when they sign their next deal, right? Like history is littered with role players who signed for a little bit more than they should have by superstar talent. Like I was watching tonight, and I actually tweeted it out that it would be nice for the Lakers to return to a place where they make guys like Clint Capella, who he has some NBA talents, but he's really like he's just another guy if he isn't playing with James Harden and Chris Paul and a wide open system the way they play with in Houston. It's hard for me to think that if he was on the Lakers, he would be the same player that he currently is on the Rockets. And whenever he signs his next deal, it's probably going to be for a little bit more than teams might be comfortable with moving forward, because he won't be playing with James Harden or Chris Paul if he changes teams. So if you're KCP, yes, he's getting a ton of opportunity and minutes, but is he doing so in a winning situation? Obviously not. And so if you can get moved, like we were talking about earlier, to Oklahoma City, where maybe you slide in, like if you're KCP and you get traded to Oklahoma City and then things turn, take a change for the better as soon as you show up because you're a lower usage rate player and you're easier to slide into those situations where you have 2 high usage players like Carmelo and Russell Westbrook. Find me a better case to make for teams when you say, look, I was traded for Paul George and the team that I landed with got better. What do you want me to say? And so it would have to be a pretty, and I like the point that you make about Rich Paul. He with having KCP on the Lakers, they can kind of tamper without necessarily tampering. So that's a nice advantage that they've had. They've probably enjoyed thus far.
Right.
But really, it just comes down to where can he win? Where can he flourish a little bit more than he has currently with the Lakers? And I think those situations are out there.
Okay, and then you mentioned Jordan Clarkson, and I think that ultimately the Lakers are going to have to make a decision here between Jordan Clarkson and Julius Randle. I think one or the other, and maybe even both, but one or the other is going to have to go if they're going to have enough cap space next summer to chase after the guys that they really want. Depending on what happens with Luol Deng, they may end up having to lose both of them. But it seems to me like Julius Randle has made himself such an invaluable piece that as well as Jordan Clarkson has played, he almost has to be the guy that's moved. I'm of the mindset at this point that Julius Randle has almost played so well that you really can't trade him, that you've got to figure out some way to keep him long term. Am I off base on that, or are you in agreement there that Julius Randle needs to be on the Lakers next season and in the future?
No, I agree 100%. Like, name me other guys in the NBA who you feel comfortable that in the same game can be switched off and be in isolation against Steph Curry and against Kevin Durant, and both times force tough shots. Like, there aren't very many guys like. I mean, it's Draymond, it's Durant and LeBron and Giannis maybe, and then it's Randle. And look, that's an exceedingly tiny sample size. Those are just 2 possessions, but there aren't very many guys across the NBA who can guard 1 through 5 the way that he has shown an ability to do this year. And look, I like Clarkson. He's played a lot better than I thought he would heading into this season. He's been able to actually run the second unit and not just be a part of the second unit. But can Josh Hart be Jordan Clarkson in the next 3-4 years? I would probably say yeah. I could pretty comfortably predict that yes, I think he could be, or he could be close to it. So yeah, I mean, Randle, and kudos to him because he obviously put in the time this offseason, right? We saw him working out in alleys and flipping tires and punching trees like Rocky and whatever it was, Rocky 4.
Rocky 4. But he's getting ready to fight Ivan Drago.
He's going to go up against Porzingis and it's going to be on. but yeah, I mean, he's just, and 100% to his own credit, he has put himself in a situation where he has the Lakers kind of in a headlock because if they were to trade him, the response from Lakers Twitter would not be kind. It would go to a dark place in a rather quick manner.
Yeah, I mean that is a credit to him. I'm a little bit, and I've seen this sentiment a little bit from other Lakers fans too. There is a little bit of concern on my part about the whole contract year thing. And that's not to say that Randle will stop working hard and everything, but he just gotten himself into such tremendous shape that I know a lot of fans were kind of like, well, wait a minute, why wasn't he doing that from day one? Why wasn't he putting himself 100% into getting in shape and being mobile and getting himself to the point where he's at right now? And I get it. I know that's not the way things really work. That sometimes it takes players a few years for things to click, that sometimes it takes, figuring out what their role is in the NBA and all that kind of stuff. But would you think the Lakers should pause for any reason, maybe because of the contract year situation stuff, at signing Randle to, say, a long-term deal if they can get the numbers to where they need them to be?
Yes and no. I have actually brought this up on my show as well with Harrison in wondering, hey, is this what Randle is going to be moving forward, or is this what Randle is going to be every 3rd or 4th year moving forward, right? When his contracts come up. Unfortunately, the Lakers don't have anything other than their experience with him to work off of. Like, this isn't a Trevor Ariza situation whose numbers get tangibly better every time his contract is about to end, right? Or a Nene Hilario. Like those guys, as soon as their contracts are coming up, that they're coming up because holy crap, look how good they're playing, right? That isn't, the Lakers don't have any track record like that to work off of. So they really have to trust the time that they've spent around him, not just on the court, but off of it in team meetings and in exit interviews and all of those situations, I would, if I had to choose one way or the other, and I'm biased being a Laker fan, but if I had to lean one way or the other, I would say that this is probably what Randle is going to be moving forward, because I think he's enjoyed the positive pub that he's been getting out there a lot, and I think that he and his family have particularly enjoyed how many people are just begging for him to play more minutes. I think that has to be kind of a cool vibe for him as well. So I wouldn't balk at offering him the kind of money that I think he's going to demand on the open market. But even with that said, look, restricted free agency hasn't worked out very well for very many guys in the last few years. Like Nerlens Noel hasn't been particularly thrilled about that process.
Nerlens Noel is getting hot dogs at halftime at this point.
So like those restricted free agency is something that if I was head of the players union, I would probably want to take a little bit closer look at. But for Randle, given how few teams have cap money out there, it wouldn't shock me completely if he decides to take the qualifying offer because so few teams can offer him much of anything, right? Like, people keep on bringing up Brooklyn, but they spent all of their money or a lot of their cap space this past offseason taking on bad contracts so they can land guys like D'Angelo Russell.
Right.
And if you just look across the league, there aren't very many teams out there who can offer Randle money. And look, if the Lakers can get away with giving Randle the qualifying offer and somehow convincing Paul George to take his option next season, now all of a sudden you're looking at a situation that I would never have predicted that the Lakers would land in Magic and Pelinka's first, or I guess second offseason in power. That would be quite the win, and it would put them in a situation where they can sign a LeBron and they can sign pieces to fit around LeBron as well.
Oh, that would be perfection for them. And I mean, the odds of something like that happening, I think, are pretty slim. But
yeah, I'd put it under 10%. If I had
that. But I mean, hey, it would be amazing if it did happen. Now, last thing before we jump over to Locked On Lakers, we're going to continue this conversation over there. We're going to dig into some trades and everything. But with the Lakers, this is sort of a tough situation that they're in. If they make a move now at the trade deadline that is sending out a player, say Clarkson, a guy who's been good and has helped them, but makes their team weaker this season and in the future, and then they don't land LeBron or don't land Paul George or somebody like that, then you may have just given that guy up for nothing when you could have had him under contract for another year. So there's a little bit of a risk there. I mean, ideally for the Lakers, they want to send these guys out the second they hear from LeBron, like, hey, I'm coming. Okay, I'll sign with you guys. They want to have those deals ready to go. But the risk is that you may have to pay more to offload a contract like Jordan Clarkson next summer, or maybe teams will try to use that as leverage against you. So how do you figure that out? How do you weigh that? Do you make a move now as the trade deadline comes up, even though it may weaken the team this year, and then it sort of lowers the vibe around the team as opposed to waiting? How are the Lakers going to manage that whole dynamic, I guess is my question, because I see that as a big hurdle that they're going to have to overcome, and they're going to have to decide what their plan or strategy is going to be moving forward.
So it all depends on the player. It's all about moving guys who you think you can either replace or their minutes won't be missed as badly. Like, if you move Nance, yes, you're going to miss some of his minutes because of the little things that he does on the floor. Luke Walton might spend like multiple nights crying into YouTube, playing "I Will Remember You." It might get kind of sad for him, but at the end of the day, if Nance is gone and you also move one of those deals, if it's Nance and Clarkson going, well, Josh Hart can slide into Clarkson's minutes, and Kuzma and Randle have shown that they are probably better overall players than Nance anyway, so you can kind of move forward. But if it takes moving a guy like Randle, who I don't think is very replaceable throughout the NBA in a feasible manner, then that's when the Lakers really should hold off and see what they can do in the offseason. Yes, holding off means that you might miss an opportunity during the season. But it's like you said earlier, Randle has played himself into a situation where he can't be moved. He'd be too hard, if not impossible altogether, to feasibly replace. And even if that means missing out on a LeBron or on a Paul George or whatever, even with that being the Magic and Pelinka's top priority as soon as they were hired, it's about what's best for the team moving forward, and you have to remain flexible. And given how well Randle has played, and very few people would have predicted this from him, you have to be flexible enough to adjust your priorities given what has taken place.
Yeah, that's true. You do have to have that flexibility. And you know what? Those are some great comments to end things on. I think that kind of sums everything up perfectly of what the Lakers are going to have to do as the trade deadline inches closer. It's going to be interesting. I think that they're going to be really active. I could be wrong, but I think after seeing the way Magic and Pelinka have operated so far, I think we're going to see them do something this year. I don't know exactly what that is just yet, but I think the Lakers are going to be very, very active as the trade deadline gets closer. So that's going to wrap things up for this show. However, we're going to jump over to Locked On Lakers, and we're going to continue this, and we're going to get a little bit more in-depth into some actual trades the Lakers could make, as well as a number of other things. So make sure you jump over to Locked On Lakers and listen to the second half of our show. As always, guys, don't forget, go to DraftKings.com, use that promo code CLNS, and of course, go check out LakersNation.com, where we are a one-stop shop for all things Lakers. That's it for today. My name is Trevor Lane. This has been the Lakers Nation podcast, and we'll see you over on Locked On Lakers.